Hey, it's Sweetpea's dad here, also known as Brian. Today we're going to box up a couple things I sold on eBay, talk about reselling, explain to you who Sweetpea is, how the name came about, how I got my start in reselling, maybe give you some tips on, packing things up, things that you don't think are fragile but actually are very fragile. So here we go. So the first item we're going to box up is this Griswold skillet cover lid. I think I paid $80 for this at a flea market. I can't remember. I buy so much iron sometimes I can't keep track of what I pay. But this is going out the door for $159.99 plus shipping to a repeat buyer. Despite popular belief, cast iron is very, very, very brittle. It's just like glass. It doesn't bend, it breaks. So on these lids, this is really thin. These get chipped a lot. So it's important to protect the edges. So I'll show you how I pack a lid. It's like the adage goes, there's a dozen ways to skin a cat. There's a dozen ways to pack iron, effectively. But this is how I do it. I've shipped probably 2,500 pieces in my life, so I'm pretty confident in my packing abilities. Of edge protection, a lot of crush protection. You don't want your edges real tight against the box. You want to have some space. So we'll put the box to the side, and then one thing I use, and you can use these for a lot of things, is pool noodles. They're like $1 a piece. I usually buy them in bulk. And I just take a slit down, and then I'll cut 4 chunks. And then we grab another one over here. There's 2. There's 3. There's 4. Put that piece to the side. And down like that. Like that. And then like that. And then we'll save that piece for another time. Then there's 4 sides to a box. So there really only needs to be, you can go the whole circumference of the lid, for extra protection. I don't, and I've never, knock on wood, I've never had a lid get broken. And then I'll take a small piece, slit that one, and then put that on top of the handle, because these handles get broke off too. Then I'll take my shrink wrap, and we'll just lift this up and wrap her up. Make sure that pool noodle don't shift. Got an edge sticking up here. We'll get that knocked down. And then flip that off. So there, our lid's packaged or protected. Bring the box back over. And I just like to use newspaper. My in-laws save all their newspaper for me, so and then my mom and dad, they don't get the daily paper, they get the Sunday paper. And they also save it for me. And then we got I like to put a cardboard down like that, because as this goes through the shipping network, it's going to jostle around, and the paper can shift and actually work itself up, and then the lid will be actually on the bottom of the box. So having that layer of cardboard in there kind of protects it. It stops that paper from working its way up around, kind of like packing peanuts. I don't like using packing peanuts for that reason. Packing peanuts are okay if you're going to ship like a box inside of a box. But they just make such a mess. Newspaper's recyclable, so reduce our waste when we can. Protect the beginning piece right there yet. Good and solid. We'll cut that there. And then we'll trim about 4 inches off this one. You know, I've tried to use big tape guns, the big fancy with the foam handles. I don't like them. I like my trusty my little red deal. I've been using that thing for 15 years. Well, not this one. I mean, they do break once in a while. But it's small, it's easy to use. So that guy's done. Next thing we're gonna box up is this little Vogue Aqua Pin Cup. It's actually a flower frog. I got this at a flea market up in New York. It's new old stock, never used. Cast iron, nice vintage green color. You know, that's pretty neat. So I've actually got 2 of them, so I'll list the other one once I get this one shipped out. So I need to find a box for that little guy. Here's one that's already. I must have had this one taped up for something else that didn't fit. That's perfect size. Perfect. Get some bubble wrap off the old rack. So I got my start in reselling. Ooh. I think the very first thing I sold was 2000. The year was 2000. I want to say 2005 or 2006. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember. Somewhere it was definitely one of those 2 years. I was actually a photographer for a number of years, mostly doing sports, racing. Did a couple commercial deals. Did a wedding. Did some portraiture, and I loved that. I loved photography, but I told Sweetpea's mom that if photography ever got to the point where it felt like a job, that I would quit. And, it got to the point where it felt like a job. People were, wanting stuff done and deadlines and, it kind of killed it for me. So I had, about $12,000 worth of photography equipment that I wanted to get rid of and get out of it. And I had bought a lot of things on eBay. I've been on eBay since 2003, but strictly as a buyer. So I thought, well, let's try to sell it on eBay, see what happens. So I sold it, and the rest is history. I started looking for other stuff to sell, and I went to an auction. A guy I worked with, his uncle had passed away, and he was having an estate auction. And I went and checked out, to see what they had. And I bought a couple odds and ends, like a rifle scope and a hand plane. And I sold that on eBay and made money. And I just kept reinvesting. And, that's how I got into reselling. But my niche for a long time was cast iron, vintage cast iron, Griswold, Wagner, Wallpack. I sold that stuff exclusively for a number of years and made a lot of money. I went to a lot of auctions, a lot of flea markets, a lot of estate sales, bought a lot of stuff privately, and I made a lot of money doing that. And then, like everything, other people catch on, and next thing you know, there's, instead of me and maybe one or two other guys at an auction bidding on cast iron, there's 15 guys bidding on cast iron. So it got super competitive, especially in my area of Pennsylvania. There's a lot of cast iron people. So that was probably 2016, 2017 was probably my best years on eBay as far as cast iron goes. And then Sweetpea was born in 2014, so she was 2, going on 3 around that time. And, I had spent a lot of time away from home, missing a lot of things on her growing up. And so I kind of backed off on eBay for a while. Just sold a little bit here and there. But, she's 11 now, so we've been getting back into it for like the last year, pushing harder, branching out, buying more things, not just, focusing on cast iron, which I still do buy a lot and sell a lot, and number of items I sell is it's other things. But as far as dollar amount goes, cast iron is still the number one thing, just because it goes for such good money. But you pay a lot of money for it too. So that's what we've been doing for the last year or so, is ramping up our online. Sweetpea's mom started listing stuff on Mercari, like stuffed animals, shoes, some of Sweetpea's stuff that she's outgrown or lost interest in. But, so Sweetpea, that's our daughter. She's 11. I gave her that name the day she was born. The first time I held her in my arms, I said, "Your daddy's little Sweetpea," and that's been her nickname ever since. She's always gonna be my little Sweetpea. So she makes some appearances in videos once in a while. Sometimes she gets bored going to flea markets, so we try to include her and give her little tasks, look for this or look for that or whatever. But someday all this stuff I leave behind will be hers. Hey guys, Sweetpea's dad's back. I had to run some errands and change and put some clean clothes on. I was a little dirty from working outside. So we got 2 more things to box up that sold. First is this Snap Ships Build to Battle. It's like a knockoff Lego kit. I actually got this at a flea market the one vendor had like, you go to a flea market and like people set up tables and they put their stuff out and display it nice. And then some guys just like have banana boxes just full of miscellaneous stuff. Like, I don't know if they do like estate clean outs or house clean outs. They buy storage units. I'm not 100% sure, but this vendor had a ton of these things, and they're all. I have a couple different ones listed, and I've sold a couple different ones. I still have a couple to list, but they're just like little like spaceship looking things. I think I bought 10 or 12, maybe 15. I can't remember. This was last year. I bought these. And he had a bunch of sealed VHS, nothing great, but stuff I can get, $6, $8, $10 for. So I stacked all this stuff up. I said, "What do you want for this? For all these little toy kits and this VHS?" And I think it was 20 or 25. I'm not 100% sure. I have the video on, but I can't remember. It wasn't any more than $25. So I'm into these things for like 50 cents. And I sold this for $7.99 plus shipping. And next thing I have is this Model Flint circa 1902 creamer, uranium creamer. And we actually just got this. We went to a yard sale last week, and these people had a lot of really good stuff you just don't see at yard sales. Yard sales in Pennsylvania, for the most part, are kids' toys, kids' clothes, and decorations you see at Hobby Lobby. 80% of what you see at yard sales in Central PA, that's what you're going to find. But these people had a bunch of nice old stuff out, and their prices were very reasonable. So I got like maybe 10 pieces, like not of this, but just 10 pieces of uranium. And I put this on for $54.99, and it sold within 12 hours. So I think I paid $150 for the whole lot, and I got $55 just for this one piece. So we're going to do good on that lot once it all sells. So I'll pack this stuff up and talk a little bit more about reselling and how I approach it, and whatever else comes to mind. You'll find in these videos I talk about a lot of different random things. I don't really stay on topic like some people do. Maybe I have a little bit of ADHD, I'm not sure. Sometimes I just ramble on and on and on. So we'll start by shipping this uranium glass pitcher. I work in manufacturing. I've been at my current job. Today's June 3rd. June 5th is actually my anniversary date of when I started. And June 5th, it'll be 25 years I've worked for the same company. I started at the bottom, did the grunt work, stacking wood. I work at a manufacturing facility that makes stuff for the kitchen and bath industry. I got hired as a lumber stacker. I did that for I'm going to say 5 or 6 months. And then they cross-trained me on, other things within that department. And long story short, I worked my way up. It wasn't always great, but I grew a lot working there. I was 19 when I started. 19 going on 20, so I was pretty immature, but we all grow up, we all go through growing pains. I didn't always have a positive attitude, but I'm very fortunate. The company I work for is a really good company, privately owned, non-union. I mean, you can say what you want, positive or negative about unions. But they've come a long way. The culture there wasn't always a positive thing, but the last 10 years or so, they've really made an effort to change the culture there, and how people perceive working there. So I'm pretty fortunate. It's a good company to work for. They take pretty good care of you. We get Christmas bonuses. We get meals. We have holiday meals. Once a month, they will have some kind of employee event. Sometimes it's just as simple as having an ice cream truck come and everybody gets ice cream, and other times they have full catered meals. But usually once a month, we have some kind of employee event for the employees, and generally speaking, I think it's pretty appreciated. I gotta switch topics. This is a funny story I gotta tell you. This was a couple years ago. Like I use newspaper and sales flyers and stuff for packing material. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, my in-laws save all the packing, all of their newspaper. They get the newspaper every day, and my parents get the Sunday paper. So they save the paper for me, and I get packing paper from my job. Yeah, the stuff that comes in that we order. But anyway, like most of the time, I just grab paper. I just grab, crumple, throw it in a box. I don't pay attention to really what's on the paper. Well, one time, I didn't know I did it until the buyer sent me a message. But I grabbed the Victoria's Secret flyer this isn't Victoria's Secret. This is just a different department store. But I crumpled it up, and that was the last thing I put on the box. And it was like a woman in like a bra and panties. And I didn't even think anything about it. I just, like I said, I just crumple, throw it in there. Well, I get this message on eBay, and the buyer wasn't mad. He kind of got a chuckle out of it too. But he's like, I'm really glad I opened this box and not my wife. And that's all he said. That's all the message said. So I messaged back. I'm like, is there something wrong with the order? And he sent me a picture. He's like, no, this was the newspaper that was on top. I'm like, oh my goodness. But yeah, it was pretty funny. So I try to pay attention a little bit now. A, for that reason, and B, to make sure my in-laws didn't sneak, accidentally put some of their junk mail in there with their address and stuff on it. So yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. You just never know. But speaking of eBay, generally speaking, I'm pretty happy with eBay. I mean, I don't agree with everything that they do. I don't agree with all their policies. But I think eBay as a whole, as a company and as a community, is pretty good. I've had my run-ins with shady buyers trying to pull the bait and switch. They say what I sent them doesn't match my description. So I'm like, okay, I offer 30-day returns, free returns. So just send it back and I'll refund you. Well, on 2 occasions now, I've had people send me back items that I didn't sell them. And, I've gotten in the habit of documenting, making sure, my bases are covered when I do accept these returns. And both times eBay has ruled in my favor, and ultimately the buyer gets their money back, but instead of coming out of my account, eBay pays it. But yeah, for the most part, I'm pretty happy on eBay. Like I said, I don't agree with everything they do. Stuff some paper in there. Stick some along that edge. Stick that right in the center. And then we'll fold it around the edge so the toy stays in the center. See, that box is a little too big, but it's nice and light, so the shipping should be pretty reasonable. And whether it's right or wrong, I charge flat rate just because I don't have a ton of listings. I only have, I think, currently 187. But the pre-package, 187 things to know what the dimensions are. It's not feasible. So yeah, that's going out 10 ounces, and it looks to be about like maybe a 9x9x4. Let's see how close we are. Yep, 9x9x4. Man, I'm better at guessing box size than I am the right box. I use pirate ship. I like the interface. My label printer's a Nelco. I think I paid $50 for it on Amazon. It works good. I mean, they make better ones. Like Rollo is a really good brand. I think, is it Jaden's? Jaden's is a good brand. A lot of resellers use. Nelco works fine for me. But a little bit ago I said I was a pro. But believe it or not, I resold for, I've been reselling since 2006. And I didn't buy a label printer up until December of 2023. I was way late to the game when buying a thermal label printer. I should have did that years ago. I wasted so much ink and so many of them half sheet labels. I'd go through probably 15 black ink cartridges a year on my freaking printer. Man, that got expensive. No, okay, I forget what I was doing. There I am. I'm in. So, let's print. Yeah, this is only going to Ohio, so that's gonna be pretty cheap. Central PA to Ohio. So we'll throw in these dimensions: 9, 9, 4. Pounds is 0. I think that said 10 ounces. 10-1, so we'll call it 11. So I charged $3.99 to ship this. It's going to be over $3.99. But like I said, I'm into these for like less than 50 cents. $5.21 ground advantage. That's the cheapest. UPS ground saver is $6.33. So we'll go ground advantage. I'm losing some money on shipping, but I'm making it up on what the profit on the item. That thing is out. Now let's ship this uranium glass thing. There, I messed up. Pirate ship. Gotta log back in because I closed my browser. Wasn't paying attention. Get rates. This box looks to be about probably 11. Oh, way off. 9. 9 by 6 by 6. So 9, 6, 6. Weights 1 pound, 7 ounces. This item here, I charged $8.99 shipping. And it's staying in Pennsylvania. So what I lost on the toy, I'll make up for on this. $7.42 ground advantage. UPS ground saver was $2.07 more. And I'm pretty limited as far as my shipping options where I'm located. The closest UPS drop off is 20 minutes away, and they charge for pickup. I experimented with pickup one time, and they wanted $23.99 to pick up 4 packages. So all the money I made in shipping, I would have lost more on top of that. You know, paying them to come pick up this stuff. So I only live not even 5, probably 3 minutes from the post office. And our post office is super nice. The postmaster in there is so nice. She's an eBayer, just a hobbyist eBayer, but she knows, she gets it. So, yeah, the next thing we sold was this Christmas Santa Claus book. I actually got this at an auction. I'm actually a licensed apprentice auctioneer in the state of Pennsylvania, and we conducted an auction for a museum that actually shut down. And we sold the contents and whatnot. And at the end of the sale, there was some stuff that was left over that just couldn't get bids, and they were giving it away because they didn't want to have to, the more they could get rid of, the less they would have to pay, to have it hauled away. And I was digging around in boxes, and I found this little book. So I'm into it for nothing. It was free, and I sold that for $29.99 plus shipping. So we got Sweetpea in the office with us. She's going to read us a little inspirational quote at the end of each video.
Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. By Albert Einstein. Bye.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap this one up. If you want to see where we find this stuff or how we find it, head on over to the Sweetpea's Attic YouTube channel. On there, that's our videos of us going to garage sales, flea markets, auctions, estate sales, antique shows, thrift stores, antique malls, maybe even some private picks. So I appreciate you guys watching. I know Sweetpea appreciates it. Sweetpea's mom appreciates it. We're just a family out here hustling, reselling, spending time together, making memories. So we'll see you in the next one, guys.